So, the most recent chapter of My Hero Academia has been released, and if you haven't seen my previous videos, we are 5 chapters, or now 4 chapters away from My Hero Academia ending. And in this chapter, we're finally getting the conclusion of the Todoroki family subplot. So, let's talk about it. But first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my manga review for My Hero Academia manga chapter 426 titled The Hellish Todoroki Family Final. And with a name like that, you can probably tell what this chapter is going to be about. It's going to be about the Todorokis and their subplot involving their family issues, their family strife, their familiar uprising, as well as what happened to Toya, aka Dabi, and we get a lot of closure in this chapter. And just to prerequisite how I feel about this chapter, I will say that of all of the feelings that I had, this is actually a really good ending for the Todoroki family conclusion. It's not the best, there are some issues that you can take from it, but overall, I think this is a solid end for this part of the story. So, let's dive into the actual review proper and try to explain why I feel that way. And to start off, we just get the first page of the characters of the Todoroki family talking to each other and just questioning why everyone is here. Natsu and Fuyumi are questioning why Shoto is here, Rei is questioning why any of her children are here, and Endeavor is questioning why Rei is. And how you just have Shoto come to the conclusion that they're all here to finish what they started, to have a conversation with Toya and to settle the strife that has been pretty much putting a burden on the family throughout the entire series and their entire lives. And with that, we get the confirmation that Toya is still very much alive and that he's in this type of capsule that may be keeping him alive for an extended period of time, but we learn that at this moment he is dying and that they can only have a conversation with him for a few minutes per day because doing so would put too much strain on his heart. And we see that this contraption is just pretty much just keeping him alive, but that he can still very much breathe and respond to the people in front of him. And you just have Toya just coming up thinking, oh my gosh, my family is here? Oh man, I feel like this is a tourist attraction. As you just have Endeavor beginning to speak about how what's to come to the future and how he's here to talk with his eldest son, his eldest child, where it's revealed that he is going to be retiring as a hero. And this ties into something that is very interesting and a little bit more distinct when it comes to My Hero when it comes to its other shonen counterparts. Because while yes, they are heroes, My Hero Academia is a little bit more grounded. Ergo, the characters have consequences for the actions that they partake in when it comes to their physical appearance. We see that in this chapter, both Rei as well as Fuyumi's hairs are cut, but also that they have burn marks all across their faces. Which makes sense because they do not have a resistance to fire, which means that they are burned. And we could say the same about Natsu, who actually does not have any type of visible scarring, but his hair is also shorter, most likely because it was also burnt. But even more importantly is what's happening with Endeavor by the fact that we get a little bit more confirmation. We see that his right arm is completely gone and that he can't even really walk and that he's reliant on this chair for his mobility. How this all ties into the fact that he planned on retiring even before the war actually started. And that Endeavor died during the war, and right now he is just Enji. You just have Toya who's just mocking Endeavor when it comes to this idea, and that it took him this long to finally recognize and view his son Toya, and he just calls out Endeavor as a coward. And this is very interesting because when it comes to Endeavor, we see that yes, he is very much a coward. And this all ties back into where we got the more proper conversation of all the Todorokis really addressing the issues that led to what happened with Toya. And one of those issues is that Endeavor was just afraid to actually have a conversation with his son because doing so may make him actually begin to give up his dream of being like the #1 hero or creating a child that could surpass All Might. And that it is through that cowardice and that ideals that we learned even through Endeavor's flashback that really shows that he is motivated by this cowardice and that led him to the actions that he took against Toya. As well as we see that Toya calls it out and Endeavor recognizes it as a whole, really just shows how much Endeavor has began and pretty much come to the conclusion of his character arc, where he has completely grown and developed into a brand new person, someone that still very much wants to atone for their actions, but has come to more of a realization and self-reflection of what he needs to do now, which is why he's planning on retiring and spending this time talking with Toya. And we see that he's also going to be stewing in all of this as a form of his punishment, and that we also get revealed that pretty much what he's been doing in this location is just replaying the actual video of Toya's like reveal to the world on loop. And as this is all happening, we get to see the heart monitor on Toya beginning to beep faster and faster, showing that this conversation is really getting to him and may be actually eating at the hatred that may be keeping him alive. And what is very interesting about this is that as we get the confirmation that Endeavor will be spending his days talking to Toya, we do get a sort of like white background imagery where we see Endeavor not fully burned, but we see Toya, but Toya isn't like the old Toya that he was at the beginning. He was Toya as Dabi mixed together, showing that even though he has more or less been accepted as Toya, he cannot get rid of the scars that created him to become Dabi. And once again, symbolism of this part is that we get confirmation that both Toya and Inji both lost their arms on the same side. They both lost their right arm. Really just showing how similar that they are when it comes to their convictions, their ideals, and who they are at the core of their characters. People who are obsessed with something that they lack, or become so obsessive and just overcome by the heat of their own flames. And as this is really getting to Toya, we get the confirmation that they can't really stay here that long because it will continue to burden on Toya's heart. And as we get even Fuyumi as well as Rei wanting to like talk more with him and wanting to actually have more conversations, we also have them wanting to say that Toya is free to hate all of them if that's what it means for him to potentially give up that hatred. And that while they are being hated by Toya, they will still want to talk with him and get to know him because they are very much still a family. And this just riles up Toya more and more to the point where they have to leave. But even then, Shoto asks a question that just ties into the conversation that he had with the individuals of Class 1A, Kirishima, Ida, and Bakugo. Which is, as they are leaving, he asks his older brother Toya what his favorite food is. And as they're walking out, you just hear the words soba, which is also Shoto's favorite food as he confirms it to Toya. And this is where we get the moment where Dabi just breaks down, where Toya breaks down with the realization that the differences that he thought were between his younger brother and himself, he also comes to the realization that they are very much family. And that most likely, even after everything that Toya has done to Shoto, Shoto still very much has love and compassion for his older brother, and it causes Toya to shed tears. And from the looks of it, they aren't necessarily tears of blood, but actual water, liquid tears. But we are under the assumption that Toya couldn't really cry on demand. So this may be the blood that we've seen, that he cries blood and not actual like water or liquid that could be seen as water. But either way, we see that the hatred within inside Toya is beginning to fade and fade away. And something else that I'm going to bring up is that I think that in this moment, we do not get confirmation that Toya is actually dead. We do get a little bit of kanji that isn't necessarily translated in the translations that I see, but there seems to be no indication of any type of flatlining on Toya's part. And I think this is a good end for Toya, that among all of the major villains that survived the war, the fact that he is the one that survived, but was also the one that still retained his hatred, shows that there is a connection between being saved physically and being saved emotionally. And that the reasoning why he is still alive is that he hasn't been saved emotionally yet. But we're seeing that saving being done by the Todoroki families coming and visiting him like this. So I think that it may be revealed in the final chapter that Toya does die, but it's going to be after he finally releases his hate. But with the closure that we're potentially getting with Toya, we're also getting a little bit of closure between the other Todoroki, specifically Natsuo. Where Natsuo pretty much confirms that he is completely separating himself from his father. He's no longer going to see him. He's not going to invite him to their wedding. The idea that he's going to like marry and make a family with his girlfriend, and that she's not going to be introduced to Endeavor. And Endeavor understands and once again apologizes. As well as we get a little bit of confirmation of what's happening with Fuyumi, as she apparently lost her job as a teacher, but another student's parent in the class was able to get her a new job. And when it comes to Japan, they pretty much take these crimes very seriously and associate the criminal with the family itself as being one comparable unit. And that kind of explains why later on in the chapter we have Endeavor trying to take all of the blame upon himself, because most likely than not in Japanese society, the blame is never solely placed upon the parent but placed upon the family. We've seen it with other characters and other villains within the story of My Hero Academia, such as Toga, where her actions were also placed upon the family themselves. And same goes for Gentle Criminal. So Endeavor is trying to make all of the blame be placed upon himself so that he can take all of the punishment so his families can live normal lives. And what I also like about this scene is that you have Natsuo cutting ties with his family, which ties into the idea of how My Hero Academia is very grounded. While we get more confirmation that he does see Endeavor in a cool light for the only time that he's ever been around his father, he still hasn't forgiven Endeavor. He still hasn't forgiven his father, and that he is making the conscious decision to completely cut ties with his family, specifically Endeavor, because of everything that happened. And it really just shows that while some characters are able to forgive and still be a part of Endeavor Inji's life, some characters are going to actively go against it and still hold him accountable, while also showing that they understand he's changing, but still will not want to build a relationship with him moving forward. So it's cool that we're getting that with Natsu, as we also do have Endeavor saying that he's going to be the one to be apologizing and having to pay these reparations for his crimes, which ties into the fact that he accepted Dabi's dance, which led to the only cool line that Natsuo accepted of his father figure, or should I say his father. And with that, the Todoroki family plotline comes to an end with the final words of Shoto talking to his mother and his father about how he's going to have Class A by his side and that he'll be fine and that he'll follow the path to become who he wants to be as they leave, as we see that once again, there are still characters who are still willing to support Endeavor even outside of the horrible crimes that he may have committed. And the implication here, and what I want to address, is that we get to see the confirmation that Burnin, Kido, and Onima are very much still alive, if not heavily wounded, but they're still willing to work alongside Endeavor even though he's retired and no longer a hero. Which implies that either all of his other sidekicks either no longer wanted to be by Endeavor's side due to his actions, or that they're just willing to support Endeavor even after they realize the crimes that he has committed upon his family, because they also recognize that he is not just purely dedicated or really visualized or understood by his family strife, his family issues, that he is more than that, especially if he's trying to change. But that's still going to be something that he's going to hold himself accountable for, which is something that you don't necessarily see a lot in stories in shonen. And you may be thinking, okay, that's well and good. So the chapter ends with Endeavor and his family having their subplot concluded, except there's a few more reveals at the end of the chapter. For instance, Ray is talking to a particular someone on the phone who is asking how the conversation went, where it's revealed that it's Hawks, who is actually having a conversation with Lady Nagant, who chooses to stay in jail. And this ties into the fact that a lot of people in My Hero Academia did not die in the final war. However, the fact that a lot of these characters are going to have lasting physical consequences may be a counterpoint to that idea. While yes, there were not the necessary consequences of death, there are the consequences of lasting scars that may heal, but also will be reminders of what could have happened and how to keep moving forward for a better future. And that's kind of the idea of the conversation that Hawks is having with Lady Nagant. Lady Nagant is choosing to stay in jail because she is still feeling the harms and the effects of what happened during her tenure as a hero. And that she still has these fears that have not been solved, showing that even after everything that Deku has done, that they are still very much flawed and that they still need a lot more growing and development to do. And that she needs to stay here to really see how the world is going to react to what Izuku showed them. And really, Even though this is just going to most likely be the last moment that we see of Lady Nagant, I really enjoy that this is her final characterization, really showing that she's going full circle. And instead of being forced to be in jail, she's choosing to be there and in a way sort of atone for her actions as well, which is a running theme in this chapter. But even then, we have this funny comedic scene of just Hawks calling her a damned villain, where we also get to see the counterpoint of Lady Nagant, where we see villains have been freed from the bondages of prison via La Brava and Gentle. And this just shows that even if there are negative consequences on the characters post the war, that there still are positive and good that comes out of it. Such as that now La Brava and Gentle Criminal, or should I just call him Gentle, are able to reunite once and for all. And as the chapter comes to an end, we get pretty much Endeavor, or maybe Ray, confirming that everything is going to be good, and some new information that Hawks is now the current president of the Hero Public Safety Commission, and that they are determined to see what things change, as we have Hawks calling for Mera-san, as it's revealed that Spinner is still at Central Hospital with someone entering his room. So yeah, I love the fact that Hawks is now the leader of the Hero Public Safety Commission, which is something that I may not have said out loud, but something that I kind of expected. It was either between him or Mera, and I think both solutions would have been good because both could have led to positive changes, but the fact that it's Hawks, and Hawks has been on both sides of the spectrum of good and evil when it comes to the Hero Public Safety Commission, he knows exactly what he may or may not need to do to make sure that the actions of the previous Hero Public Safety Commission doesn't come back to bite him or lead to those same issues. And how he does not necessarily know how things will change, but most likely than not, he's going to be helping to rely on Deku and the younger generation to help him. And the fact that we're getting Spinner at the end of this chapter very much implies that the next chapter we're going to be focusing on whether or not Spinner is alive in this moment. And most likely he is, as we see that he's actually most likely looking at the door, seeing who's coming in. He may be a little bit brain dead at this moment, but it also confirms that the scales that we saw a few chapters back were coming from Spinner. And most likely in this chapter that's coming up, we may get a conversation with Shoji with Spinner, or even Deku with Spinner in this moment. And now this could also tie into the potential conversation that we're going to get with Uraraka and maybe even Overhaul. Overall, I think that this was a solid chapter for the end of the Todoroki family subplot. I think this subplot is most likely the best subplot that was ever done within the world of My Hero Academia's story. And while you may have some issues such as both Rei and Fuyumi didn't necessarily have a conversation with Toya, or that there may be a heavier focus on Endeavor, we need to realize that this plotline was heavily focused on Endeavor at the core, so it makes sense that he has a larger role in conversation with Toya, but also ending with Shoto, and that this is what allows for Dabi to begin to release his hatred is something that I cannot get over and be mad at, even at the cost of potentially having the female cast not have that much of the spotlight. But it's not that they lacked any spotlight at all. As well as just the reveals at the end of this chapter is just really tying a bow on everything to be resolved in My Hero Academia in a very satisfying way in my opinion, and I can't wait to see what the next chapter is going to be about when it involves Spinner. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for the chapter. And let me ask you this, how did you feel about the Todoroki subplot? Do you think that it was done extremely well, or do you think that it could have used some major improvement or overhaul? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more of my reviews for the ending of My Hero Academia to come, potentially within the next 4 weeks. Do all that cool jazz. Hopefully, I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!